Klingon War Council fell silent as the newly discovered human race flashed to life on the view screen. Weapons of mass destruction and planet-wide wars playing out in gruesome detail. A chill ran down their spines. Never had they seen a species advance so rapidly and violently, rising from sticks and stones to faster-than-light ships in the cosmic blink of an eye. "They call this history?" Sire Father growled, slamming a fist on the obsidian table. "More like a death wish. Mark my words, this human species will be trouble." The imposing Klingon had seen empires rise and fall, but none so quickly or brutally as Earth's nation-states. Nuclear fire consumed cities, armored vehicles rolled over continents, and now sleek human ships roamed the stars, armed to the teeth. "We must assess the threat they pose," Sire Father commanded. "Send scouts to probe their defenses. Place spies in their ranks. The future of our dominion depends on it." As the Klingon Empire rallied its forces, the humans had their own plans in motion. Commander Arthur Jackson of the United Earth Space Force scowled at a holographic star map, angry red dots highlighting alien ships lurking at the fringes of their space. "All right, people, listen up," Arthur barked. "We've got unknown hostiles on our doorstep. Our mission is to get out there, track their movements, and find out what the hell they want. But let me be clear, we do not engage unless threatened. The last thing we need is an interstellar incident." His crew nodded grimly, the weight of their task sinking in. First contact with an alien race could lead to a new era of peace and discovery, or a war that would make their own bloody history look like a schoolyard scuffle. As both sides prepared for the coming storm, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same. The future teetered on a razor's edge between annihilation and a golden age, between fear and hope. In that moment, gazing into the unknown, Arthur couldn't help but wonder, were they ready? Powerful as humanity had become, were they truly prepared for what awaited them in the cold depths of space? He took a deep breath, hands tightening around the armrests of his command chair. "Bring the engines online," he ordered, voice steady. "It's time to face our destiny." The mood on the bridge of Commander Arthur Jackson's ship was electric with anticipation and dread. The decoded Klingon transmissions painted a grim picture. An advanced alien race, sizing up Earth like a dragon eyeing its next meal. Arthur gripped the arms of his command chair, his fist clenched as he stared at the view screen filled with alien ships. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth," his comms officer reported, her voice taut. Arthur nodded. "Put it through." The face of Admiral Ivanova, the steely commander of Earth's space forces, appeared on the screen. "Commander Jackson, we have a situation. Our intelligence has intercepted Klingon communications indicating they've been gathering extensive data on our capabilities. Military strength, technological level, even our psychological profiles and history. We have reason to believe they may be preparing for an invasion." Arthur's blood ran cold. The weight of his mission crashed down on him like a collapsing star. "Understood, Admiral. What are our orders?" Ivanova leaned forward, her eyes hard as diamonds. "You are to initiate contact with the Klingons. Assess their intentions. If they prove hostile, you have full authorization to take whatever measures necessary to defend Earth. But Arthur, be careful. We're in uncharted territory here. One wrong move could spark an interstellar war." "Acknowledged, Admiral." Arthur closed the channel and turned to his crew. "All right, people, you heard the lady. Prep for contact, prime weapon systems, but do not lock targets. We need to be ready for anything, but let's not start this party prematurely." As the human ship glided towards the Klingon fleet, Sire Father watched its approach on the main viewer. His eyes narrowed. "The humans come to us," he rumbled. "Good. Let them make the first move, but be ready to strike if they so much as twitch wrong." His warriors growled their assent, hands hovering over weapons consoles, blood eager for battle. The two ships faced each other in the void, silence stretching between them like a bowstring drawn taut. Then a screen flickered to life on both bridges as Arthur opened a channel. He swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. Everything hinged on this moment. "Greetings," he began. I am Commander Arthur Jackson of the United Earth Space Force. I come in peace, but I will defend my people if necessary. Sirefather's scarred face filled the screen, his expression unreadable. Commander Jackson, you have courage to approach us thus. I am Sirefather, Master of the Klingon War Council. Arthur inclined his head, respect from one soldier to another. Sirefather, I will be direct. We have reason to believe your empire has been gathering intelligence on Earth, our defenses, and history. We need to know, what are your intentions towards humanity? Sirefather leaned back, studying Arthur like a snake sizing up a mouse. Your people intrigue us, Commander. Such a violent history and yet such rapid progress. You are either destined for greatness or ruin. As for intentions, the Klingon Empire brooks no threats to our dominance. Too often, the greatest threats come from those with the most potential. Arthur's heart raced, but he kept his voice level. I assure you, Sirefather, Earth seeks peaceful relations with other worlds, but we will not roll over for conquerors. If you move against us, we will meet you with all the strength and conviction at our command. A low chuckle rumbled in Sirefather's throat. I would expect no less from a race of warriors. But how do we measure the worth of your words? How do I know humans will not be the ones to seize the first advantage and attack? Silence hung heavy on the bridge as Arthur racked his brain for a solution. Then it hit him, a way to test each other's mettle without setting off the powder keg. He met Sirefather's gaze squarely. A demonstration, then, of each side's abilities. Your best ship against mine, a duel of champions. We'll see the measure of human and Klingon in single combat. It may provide a safer outlet for tensions. A fierce grin split Sirefather's craggy features. Well spoken, Commander. I accept your challenge. Prepare yourself. As view screens went dark and crews scrambled to battle stations, a strange calm settled over Arthur. He knew, deep in his bones, that the next few minutes would decide the fate of worlds. On Earth, in the halls of the UN, leaders huddled white-faced around monitors, watching the events unfolding far above their heads. On distant Qonos, the Klingon War Council gnashed their teeth and pounded tables as they viewed the standoff, hungry for human blood to christen their warships' hulls. All waited with nervous excitement to see whether this confrontation would defuse the burgeoning conflict or seal two races' fates in fire. The sudden burst of phaser fire lit up the void of space as Arthur's ship and Sirefather's Klingon vessel clashed. Arthur's fingers flew across the tactical display, issuing rapid-fire orders to his crew. Evasive pattern Delta, concentrate fire on their port nacelles. His smaller, nimbler ship danced through space, narrowly avoiding the barrage of disruptor blasts from the Klingon warship. The bridge shook as a glancing blow struck their shields. Shields at 82%, Captain, shouted his tactical officer. Arthur nodded grimly. Reroute auxiliary power. Keep those shields up. On the Klingon bridge, Sirefather snarled in frustration as the human vessel slipped past another volley of weapons fire. Target that insolent gnat, he roared. Full spread of photon torpedoes. But as the torpedoes streaked towards Arthur's ship, it executed a precise barrel roll, the deadly projectiles sailing harmlessly past. Now, Arthur commanded, hit them with everything we've got. A devastating barrage of phasers and quantum torpedoes slammed into the Klingon ship's exposed flank. Sirefather stumbled as his bridge erupted in sparks and smoke. Engine core critically damaged, a Klingon officer reported. We've lost propulsion. Sirefather's eyes widened as he realized their vulnerability. He braced himself for the killing blow, but it never came. Instead, Arthur's face appeared on the interface. Klingon vessel, stand down. This battle need not end in destruction. Sirefather's pride bristled, but a spark of curiosity ignited within him. He studied the human commander's resolute expression. You show restraint, Sirefather growled. Why? Because there's been enough death already, Arthur replied firmly. I propose we meet and discuss our future as equals, not enemies. After a tense moment, Sirefather nodded. Agreed. I will come aboard your vessel. The mood was electric as Sirefather materialized in Arthur's transporter room, flanked by armed guards from both sides. The two leaders sized each other up as they walked to the conference room. "Your ship fights well," Sirefather admitted grudgingly. "I did not expect such skill from humans." Arthur inclined his head. "We've learned much in our journey to the stars, but we seek knowledge and cooperation, not conquest." Their discussion was abruptly cut short as alarms blared throughout the ship. Arthur's communications officer burst into the room, face pale. "Sir, urgent transmission from Earth Command. A rogue Klingon fleet is attacking one of our outer colonies. They're being overrun." Arthur and Sirefather locked eyes, the implications clear. This attack could shatter their fragile truce and plunge both their peoples into devastating war. Sirefather's expression hardened. "These traitors dishonor the Empire. We must stop them." Arthur nodded grimly. "Agreed, but we'll need to work together." As they raced to the bridge, Arthur and Sirefather began hammering out a plan. They would lead a joint task force to defend the colony and subdue the rogue Klingons. "Helm, set course for the Avalon colony, maximum warp," Arthur ordered, "and open a channel to Earth Command and the Klingon High Council. They need to know what's happening." As their hastily assembled fleet streaked towards the embattled human world, Arthur and Sirefather stood side by side on the bridge. The fate of two civilizations now rested on their ability to forge an alliance from the ashes of conflict. News of this unprecedented cooperation spread like wildfire across both Earth and the Klingon homeworld. On Earth, the UN Security Council convened an emergency session, debating the wisdom of trusting their former enemies. On Konos, the Klingon High Council roared in heated argument, some decrying Sirefather as a traitor, while others saw the potential for a powerful new alliance. As the joint fleet neared the Avalon colony, Arthur and Sirefather exchanged a tense glance. The true test of their fledgling partnership was about to begin. As their fleet hurtled towards the Avalon colony, Arthur's hands flew across the tactical display, analyzing the incoming sensor data. The situation was even worse than they'd feared. "Sirefather, look at this," Arthur called, gesturing to the readouts. "Those bastards are hitting the colony with everything they've got. Disruptor cannons, photon torpedoes, the works." The Klingon commander leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he studied the tactical overlay. "Their shields won't hold much longer under that barrage," he growled. Arthur punched the comm button. "Avalon colony, this is Commander Jackson. What's your status?" The response came through garbled with static. "Commander, thank God. We're getting slaughtered down here. Shields at 12% and falling. They're trying to beam boarding parties directly into the command center. We can't hold out much longer." Arthur exchanged a grim look with Sirefather. They both knew what needed to be done. "Listen up," Arthur barked to the assembled officers. "We're splitting our forces. I'll lead the space assault, drawing their fire. Sirefather, you take a strike team and beam down to reinforce the colony's ground defenses." As the crews scrambled to their positions, Arthur gripped Sirefather's massive forearm. "Watch yourself down there, you ugly son of a bitch." Sirefather's lips curled into a fierce grin. "Try not to get your ships blown to atoms, human." Arthur's fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. Lances of phaser fire and pulsing photon torpedoes slammed into the rogue Klingons' shields. For a moment, the enemy vessels reeled under the unexpected ferocity of the human assault. "Now," Arthur roared into the comms. "Sirefather, go!" On the colony's surface, Sirefather materialized in the midst of chaos. Disruptor fire crisscrossed the air as human colonists fought desperately against the Klingon boarding parties. Without hesitation, Sirefather waded into the fray, his bat'leth singing as it cleaved through enemy flesh. "Stand fast," he bellowed to the beleaguered humans. "The Empire fights with you this day." Arthur watched from his command chair as Sirefather's warriors joined the colonists, turning the tide of the ground battle. But his satisfaction was short-lived. A massive explosion rocked his flagship, nearly throwing him from his seat. "Status report!" he shouted. His tactical officer's face was ashen. "Sir, We've lost engines on decks 4 through 7, hull breaches on multiple levels. We can't take much more of this. Arthur's mind raced. They were being torn apart, but if they retreated now, Sire Father and the colonists would be overrun. He closed his eyes, knowing what had to be done. All hands, this is the commander. Prepare for emergency evacuation. Get to the escape pods and shuttles, that's an order. As his crew scrambled to abandon ship, Arthur opened a channel to Sire Father. We're getting our asses handed to us up here. I'm evacuating my people to the colony's surface. Can you hold out long enough for us to reach you? Sire Father's response was nearly drowned out by the sound of battle. We will hold, human. But hurry. I have no desire to die today. Arthur raced for the last remaining shuttle, pausing only to make sure the rest of his crew had made it off safely. As they streaked towards the colony, he watched Sire Father's ships laying down blistering cover fire, buying them precious seconds to reach safety. The shuttle touched down hard amidst the rubble of what had once been the colony's main plaza. Arthur stumbled out, disruptor fire still filling the air. He spotted Sire Father, the Klingon's armor scorched and dented, but still fighting like a demon. As the last of the rogue Klingons fell, an eerie quiet settled over the battlefield. Arthur made his way to Sire Father, both leaders surveying the carnage around them. We held, Sire Father grunted, wiping blood from his blade. Arthur nodded grimly. For now. But this isn't over. My ships are crippled, your forces are depleted, and this colony is in shambles. We intercepted transmissions. Those bastards have reinforcements on the way. Sire Father's eyes blazed with defiance. Then we will die with honor, human. Not if I can help it, Arthur replied. There's a heavily defended system not far from here. If we can reach it, we might have a chance to regroup and mount a real defense. The Klingon commander considered this for a moment, then nodded. It seems we have little choice. But know this, Arthur Jackson. If we fall together. As they began preparations to evacuate the battered colony, Arthur couldn't shake the feeling that the next few hours would determine not just their fate, but the future of human-Klingon relations for generations to come. With time running out and enemies closing in, they would need every ounce of skill, courage, and luck they could muster. Arthur's eyes darted across the tactical display, his fingers flying over the controls. Sire Father, we've got incoming. The rogue fleet's almost on us. The Klingon commander growled, baring his teeth. Then we fight to the last, human. Arthur shook his head. Not today. I've got a better idea. He pointed to a swirling mass of energy on the long-range scanners. That's our ticket out of here. Sire Father's eyes narrowed. A wormhole? You'd risk our entire fleet on such unstable passage? Got a better idea? Arthur shot back. The Klingon considered for a moment, then nodded curtly. Very well. We have little choice. Arthur opened a channel to the rest of the fleet. All ships, this is Commander Jackson. Prepare for emergency evacuation. We're getting the hell out of Dodge. The next hours were a blur of frantic activity. Wounded human soldiers were carried onto shuttles, their groans echoing through the corridors. Colonial administrators rushed to upload vital data, fingers flying across terminals. Sire Father's warriors formed a perimeter, disruptors at the ready. As the last of the personnel boarded, Arthur's sensors blared a warning. He looked up to see the rogue Klingon ships appearing on the edge of the system, weapons powering up. Now or never, Arthur muttered. He keyed the comms. All ships on my mark. Mark. The ragtag fleet surged forward, plunging into the maw of the wormhole. Arthur's stomach lurched as gravitational forces tore at his ship. Warning klaxons blared as hull integrity alarms screamed for attention. Shields failing, his tactical officer shouted over the din. Arthur gripped his chair, squeezing hard. Reroute all available power. Through the view screen, he saw Sire Father's flagship start to drift, its nacelles flickering. Without hesitation, Arthur fired up the tractor beams, latching onto the massive Klingon vessel. Hold together, he muttered, willing their ships to survive the passage. With a final wrenching lurch, they burst out of the wormhole and into a sea of hostile ships. Alien vessels of unknown configuration swarmed around them, weapons blazing. "Evasive maneuvers," Arthur barked. But as his helmsman tried to respond, more systems failed. Arthur exchanged a grim look with Sire-Father over the comlink. "We can't fight them," Arthur said. "Not like this." Sire-Father nodded. "Then we do not fight. We confuse." Arthur grinned, catching on. "Tactical. Prepare to jettison all non-essential debris. On my mark, detonate our aft torpedo casings." As the alien ships closed in, Arthur gave the order. A massive cloud of twisted metal erupted from the human and Klingon ships, followed by a series of blinding explosions as the torpedoes detonated. In the chaos, Arthur's fleet jumped to warp, only to drop out moments later and change course. They repeated this again and again, each jump draining more of their precious power. Arthur's bridge was dark, emergency power barely keeping life support online. Beside him, Sire-Father's image on the screen flickered weakly. "One more jump," Arthur said, his voice hoarse. "That's all we've got left." Sire-Father nodded grimly. "Then let it be a good one, human." As they prepared for their final warp, a flicker on long-range sensors caught Arthur's eye. His heart leapt. "There," he shouted. "Federation Starbase, dead ahead." With the last dregs of their power, the battered fleet made the jump, materializing within the Starbase's defensive perimeter. As repair crews swarmed their ships, Arthur slumped in his chair, exhausted but alive. Hours later, restocked and patched up, Arthur met Sire-Father in the Starbase's conference room. The Klingon looked as weary as he felt. "We made it," Arthur said simply. Sire-Father nodded. "Against impossible odds, perhaps there is hope for our peoples yet." But before they could celebrate further, a young officer burst into the room, face pale. "Sirs, we're receiving reports. Multiple outbreaks of violence, both in Federation and Klingon space. It's not just the rogues anymore." Arthur and Sire-Father exchanged a troubled look. Something more was at play here, something that threatened everything they'd fought for. "We need answers," Arthur said grimly. Sire-Father nodded, his eyes hard. "And we will find them, human. Together." Arthur's eyes scanned the incoming reports, his brow furrowing with each new piece of troubling intel. Across the tactical display, red icons flashed, signaling outbreaks of violence on both human and Klingon worlds. He turned to Sire-Father, who stood rigid, studying the same data. "This isn't random," Arthur said, his voice low. "Look at the pattern. These attacks are too coordinated." Sire-Father nodded, his face etched with concern. "Agreed. Someone seeks to shatter our alliance before it can truly take root." The Starbase's war room bustled with activity as human and Klingon officers pored over intelligence reports. Arthur called out, "Lieutenant Chen, what's the latest from Outpost 47? Chen looked up from her console, her face grim. "Sir, they're reporting another riot. Anti-alliance propaganda flooded their comms just before it started. Same story we're seeing across a dozen worlds." Arthur smacked his fist on the table. "Damn it, we need to get ahead of this." Sire-Father's eyes narrowed. "We must find the source. Cut off the head of this beast before it devours us all." Over the next hours, they pieced together a disturbing picture. Supply lines crisscrossed multiple sectors, funneling weapons and resources to key instigators. Communication intercepts revealed coded messages coordinating the attacks. "There," Sire-Father growled, pointing to a cluster of data points. "The Breen. It all leads back to their territory." Arthur nodded grimly. "Makes sense. They've always feared a united front between our peoples." Sire-Father's lip curled in a snarl. "Then we must strike at their heart, crush their ability to sow this chaos." "Agreed," Arthur said, "but we have to be careful. One wrong move and we could ignite a full-scale war with the Breen. We can't let them paint us as the aggressors." They spent the next days planning, assembling an elite strike force of humans and Klingons. Arthur oversaw a series of lightning raids, disrupting Breen supply lines and capturing key operatives. Meanwhile, Sire-Father's warriors executed precision strikes, sowing confusion among the Breen leadership. As the operation reached its climax, Arthur stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display. His fleet engaged the Breen defenders in a furious battle, drawing their attention away from the true threat. "Now, Sire Father," Arthur said into the comm, "you're clear to proceed." On the Breen homeworld, Sire Father and his team moved swiftly through the corridors of the Central Command Hub. Disguised as prisoners, they had infiltrated deep into the heart of Breen power. With practiced efficiency, they neutralized the guards and seized control of key systems. Arthur watched the feeds from his ship, his heart pounding as Sire Father's team executed their plan flawlessly. Within minutes, the Breen leadership was in custody, their ability to coordinate further attacks neutralized. As the dust settled, Arthur and Sire Father faced a new challenge. Millions of Breen civilians, long isolated from the galactic community, now found themselves without direction. "We can't leave them like this," Arthur argued. "If we don't step in, someone worse will fill the power vacuum." Sire Father's face was a mask of doubt. "Showing mercy to a defeated foe. It goes against everything I've been taught." Arthur placed a hand on the Klingon's shoulder. "I know, but think about it. If we can bring the Breen into the fold, it'll show the galaxy what our alliance can truly accomplish." Reluctantly, Sire Father nodded. "Very well, human. We will try it your way." In the days that followed, Arthur and Sire Father walked a precarious line. They deployed joint task forces across Breen space, establishing a presence that was both reassuring and intimidating. As relief supplies flowed to Breen worlds, Alliance diplomats worked to establish new, cooperative leadership. But their actions did not go unnoticed. In the corridors of power across the galaxy, worried voices whispered of human and Klingon expansionism. Some saw hope in the Alliance's actions, while others feared a new, unstoppable juggernaut. As Arthur and Sire Father stood on the observation deck of the starbase watching ships come and go, they knew their work was just getting started. The true test of their alliance and their vision for a united galaxy was only just beginning. As the dust settled on Breen Prime, Arthur Jackson stood before a sea of alien faces. The crowd buzzed with tension, a mix of fear and curiosity etched on their features. He took a deep breath, activating his universal translator. "People of Breen," he began, his voice carrying across the war-torn plaza. "We come not as conquerors, but as allies. Our goal is to rebuild, to create a future of prosperity and peace for all." As Arthur spoke, his eyes scanned the crowd. He saw skepticism, anger, and glimmers of hope. Behind him, a phalanx of Federation and Klingon troops stood at attention, their weapons holstered but visible. Sire Father watched from the sidelines, his face a mask of stoic observation. The Klingon's hand rested on his Diktag, ready for any hint of treachery. As Arthur finished his speech, a Breen stepped forward. "Fine words, human, but actions speak louder. How can we trust you after what you've done to our world?" Arthur nodded, acknowledging the challenge. "You're right to be wary, but look around you." He gestured to the Federation engineers already at work, setting up temporary shelters and medical facilities. "This is just the beginning. We're here to help you rebuild, to create a stronger Breen than ever before." As the days passed, the Alliance's presence on Breen worlds grew. Federation replicators hummed day and night, producing food, medicine, and building materials. Klingon warriors stood guard as human doctors treated the wounded and sick. But not all was peaceful. On the outskirts of New Breen City, a group of resistance fighters watched the proceedings with growing anger. "They speak of peace while their warships orbit our planet," growled Thought Gore, a former Breen commander. "We must strike now, before they sink their claws deeper into our people." Across the galaxy, in the corridors of Starfleet Command, Admiral Ross paced before a group of stern-faced officers. "Jackson's gone too far," he snapped. "This humanitarian mission is nothing but a land grab. We're getting reports of unrest on a dozen Federation worlds. People are scared we're stretching ourselves too thin." On Kyonos, Sire Father faced his own critics. Chancellor Gowron glared at him, teeth bared in a snarl. "You let that human lead you by the nose. Gowron spat. "Where is the glory in rebuilding alien cities? We should crush the breen beneath our boots, not coddle them." Sirefather stood his ground. "The human's way may seem soft, but it has potential. If we can turn the breen into allies, our position in the quadrant will be unassailable." Back on Breen Prime, Arthur supervised the construction of a new power plant. As he watched the mixed team of humans, Klingons, and Breen work together, a smile tugged at his lips. But his moment of satisfaction was shattered by an explosion that rocked the site. Debris rained down as workers scattered. Arthur ducked behind a half-built wall, his heart pounding. "Secure the perimeter!" he shouted into his comm badge. "Medical teams to the construction site now!" As the dust settled, Arthur saw a figure dart away from the blast zone. Without hesitation, he gave chase, phaser drawn. He cornered the suspect in a narrow alley. To his shock, the Breen's helmet melted away, revealing the fluid features of a founder. "It's over," Arthur said, his phaser trained on the changeling. "You've lost." The founder's face twisted in a sneer. "You understand nothing, Solid. This is just the beginning." Before Arthur could react, the changeling liquefied, slipping through a crack in the ground and disappearing. As Arthur stared at the spot where the founder had vanished, his comm badge chirped. Sirefather's gruff voice came through. "Human, we have a problem. Our supply lines to Outpost 47 have been hit. This goes deeper than we thought." Arthur's eyes sharp. The stakes had just gotten higher. As he turned to head back to the command center, he knew that the real battle for the future of the Alliance and the Quadrant was just beginning. Arthur wiped sweat from his brow as he surveyed the bustling refugee camp on Breen Prime. Federation engineers worked alongside Klingon laborers, erecting prefab shelters and medical facilities. A group of Breen civilians huddled nearby, their refrigeration suits glinting in the harsh sunlight. "Progress," Arthur muttered, "but at what cost?" His comm badge chirped. "Jackson, we've got trouble in Sector 7. Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled. "Another hit-and-run attack on our supply convoy." Arthur's expression resolute. "Casualties?" "3 wounded, sir. Minimal damage to cargo, but it's not about the supplies," Arthur finished. "It's about spreading fear." He turned to find Sirefather approaching, the Klingon's face etched with frustration. "These cowards strike from the shadows," Sirefather growled. "We should crush them with overwhelming force." Before Arthur could respond, his comm badge chirped again. "Sir," Chen's voice was urgent, "we're receiving reports of coordinated attacks across multiple sectors. It's Thought Kala, sir. He's gone rogue." Arthur's blood ran cold. He locked eyes with Sirefather. "War room, now!" Minutes later, they stood before a holographic display of Alliance territory. Red icons flashed across the map, each representing a strike by Thought Kala's forces. "He's hitting our shipyards and weapons depots," Arthur said, his voice tight, "trying to cripple our ability to respond." Sirefather banged his hand on the table. "Then we must respond with fury. Crush this upstart and any who follow him." Arthur shook his head. "No, a show of force that big will only drive more Breen into his arms. We need precision, not brute strength." "You would have us creep about like thieves?" Sirefather sneered. "I'd have us win," Arthur shot back. "A joint strike team, our best operatives, human and Klingon. We find Thought Kala and take him out of play before he can do more damage." Sirefather's eyes narrowed, then he nodded grudgingly. "Very well, human. We will try it your way." Days later, Arthur stood in the war room, watching live feeds from the strike team's helmet cams. The squad moved silently through the twisted wreckage of an abandoned Breen mining colony, their stealth suits blending seamlessly with the shadows. Static crackled over the comms. "Target sighted," a Klingon operative growled. "Thought Kala's base dead ahead." Arthur leaned forward, his heart pounding. "Remember, we want him alive if possible. Go." The feeds erupted into chaos as the team breached the compound. Disruptor fire lit up the night, accentuated by the eerie glow of an ion storm raging overhead. Arthur watched, hands clenched, as his operatives fought their way through Thought Kayla's defenses. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared on screen, Thought Kala himself, his distinctive armor unmistakable. The Breen warlord raised his weapon, but a human operative was faster. A stun blast caught Thought Kala square in the chest, dropping him to the ground. "We've got him," the team leader reported. "Thought Kala is in custody." Arthur exhaled sharply, allowing himself a moment of relief. But as he turned to Sirefather, he saw no triumph in the Klingon's eyes, only grim determination. "This victory may be hollow," Sirefather rumbled. "I fear we have only scratched the surface of a far greater threat." Arthur nodded, his earlier elation fading. "Agreed. Let's see what our new guest has to say for himself." Hours later, Arthur and Sirefather stood in the interrogation chamber, staring at the captured Thought Kayla. The Breen warlord's helmet had been removed, revealing a face twisted with defiance. "You think you've won?" Thought Kayla sneered. "You understand nothing. We are but instruments in a greater design." Arthur stepped forward, his voice cold. "Whose design? Who's pulling your strings?" Thought Kayla laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "The Syndicate sees all, controls all. You've already lost. You just don't know it yet." Arthur and Sirefather exchanged alarmed glances. As they left the chamber, Arthur's mind raced. "We need to call a war council," he said. "If what he's saying is true, we're facing something far bigger than Breen separatists." Sirefather nodded grimly. "Indeed, and I fear our alliance may not be strong enough to weather this storm alone." As they walked toward the command center, Arthur's comm badge chirped once more. "Sir," Chen's voice was strained, "we're detecting unusual activity in the neutral zone, multiple unidentified ships on an intercept course." Arthur's stomach dropped. He looked at Sirefather, seeing his own concern mirrored in the Klingon's eyes. The true test of their alliance was only just beginning. The unidentified ships loomed larger on the monitor as Arthur and Sirefather raced to the command center. Alarms blared throughout the station, drowning out the frantic chatter of officers and diplomats. "Report!" Arthur barked as he burst through the doors. Lieutenant Chen's fingers danced across her console. "Sir, we're detecting at least a dozen vessels of unknown configuration. They're not responding to hails." Arthur's eyes narrowed. On screen. The main display flickered to life, revealing a swarm of sleek, predatory ships. Their hulls gleamed with an unfamiliar alloy, seeming to absorb the starlight around them. Sirefather growled, "I've never seen designs like these. Not Romulan, not Dominion." "Syndicate," Arthur breathed, the pieces falling into place. "It has to be." The Klingon nodded grimly. "Then we face a foe more dangerous than we imagined." Arthur turned to his staff. "I want every Allied ship we can muster here within the hour, and get me a secure channel to Starfleet Command and the Klingon High Council. We need to convene an emergency summit." Days later, Arthur stood before a tense gathering of diplomats and military leaders from across the quadrant. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as species that had been bitter enemies mere weeks ago now sat side by side. "We face a threat unlike any we've encountered before," Arthur began, his voice carrying across the room. "The Syndicate has manipulated us all, playing us against each other while they built their power in the shadows." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A Romulan senator stood, her face a mask of skepticism. "And why should we believe you, human? How do we know this isn't some ploy to consolidate your own power?" Before Arthur could respond, the station rocked violently. Emergency klaxons wailed as the lights flickered. "We're under attack!" Chen's voice crackled over the comms. "Multiple Syndicate vessels have breached our outer defenses." Chaos erupted in the chamber as diplomats scrambled for safety. Arthur locked eyes with Sirefather across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. "To arms!" Sirefather roared, drawing his batleth. "Show these Patak the fury of a united galaxy." The station became a war zone as Syndicate strike teams materialized in key locations. Arthur ducked behind an overturned table as disruptor fire sizzled overhead. He glimpsed a blur of movement and fired, his phaser beam catching a Syndicate operative square in the chest. Sirefather led a charge of Klingon warriors, their battle cries echoing through the corridors as they clashed with the invaders. The station's security forces rallied, forming a defensive perimeter around the diplomats. Arthur fought his way to a command console, his uniform singed and torn. "Chen, status report." "We've lost primary weapons and shields are failing," she replied, her voice strained. "But sir, you need to see this." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a familiar face. The founder Arthur had encountered on Breen Prime. The changeling's features twisted into a cruel smile. "Did you think you could stop us so easily, Solid?" it sneered. "The Syndicate is everywhere and nowhere. You've already lost." Arthur's blood ran cold as he realized the true scope of their enemy. This was no mere criminal enterprise. It was a cancer eating away at the very fabric of galactic society. As the battle raged around him, Arthur made a decision. He turned to Sirefather, who had just dispatched another Syndicate operative with a savage blow. "We need to end this," Arthur said, his voice hard. "Not here, not now. We need to take the fight to them." Sirefather nodded, understanding in his eyes. A bold strike at the heart of the beast, but where? Arthur's mind raced, piecing together fragments of intelligence. There's a station, deep in uncharted space. It has to be their base of operations. "Then we go," Sirefather declared. "But first, we must survive this day." The two leaders fought side by side, human and Klingon united against a common foe. As they battled their way to the station's core, Arthur knew that this was only the beginning. The true test of their alliance, and the future of the cosmos, lay in the stars beyond. The acrid stench of burning circuits and vaporized metal filled Arthur's nostrils as he stumbled through the wreckage of the Syndicate station. Sparks rained down from shattered conduits, casting eerie shadows across the twisted bulkheads. He wiped blood from a gash above his eye, scanning for survivors. "Sirefather," Arthur called out, his voice hoarse from the smoke. "Report!" A grunt echoed from beneath a fallen support beam. Arthur rushed over, straining to lift the debris. Sirefather emerged, his armor scorched and dented. "We live, human," the Klingon growled, clasping Arthur's forearm. "But at what cost?" Before Arthur could respond, his comm badge crackled to life. Lieutenant Chen's voice came through, strained and urgent. "Commander Jackson, we have multiple emergencies across Alliance space. Syndicate cells are striking everywhere." Arthur's gut clenched. He locked eyes with Sirefather, seeing his own dread mirrored in the Klingon's face. "Give me details, Chen." "Sir, it's chaos. Breen worlds are falling to Syndicate mercenaries. They're slaughtering our peacekeepers, bombing outreach centers. We're losing control sector by sector." Arthur's fists clenched. His mind raced through years of careful diplomacy, cultural exchange programs, all the work to build trust, now reduced to ashes. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what had to be done. "Sirefather," Arthur said, his voice low and hard. "We need to change tactics. No more half measures." The Klingon nodded grimly. "Finally, you see reason. What is your plan?" "Full mobilization. We hit every Syndicate stronghold we can find. No mercy, no prisoners." Sirefather's eyes gleamed with approval. "I will lead the assault myself. We will crush these Pataku beneath our boots." Days later, Arthur stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching tactical displays as Alliance forces unleashed hell across destabilized sectors. Phaser banks and disruptor cannons tore through Breen cities, vaporizing entire blocks to root out Syndicate cells. Klingon boarding parties swarmed through captured industrial centers, setting demolition charges to deny the enemy resources. Arthur's comm badge chirped. "Jackson here." "Sir," Chen's voice was hesitant. "We've begun relocating civilian populations. The internment camps are at capacity." Arthur closed his eyes, bile rising in his throat. "Understood, Lieutenant. Carry on." As he watched another Breen city vanish in atomic fire, Arthur fought to quell the nausea building inside him. This brutality sickened him to his core, but he saw no alternative. The syndicate had to be stopped, whatever it takes. Sirefather approached, fresh from leading a boarding action. The enemy falters, human. Our strength breaks their will. Arthur nodded, forcing steel into his voice. Good, but we can't let up. Not until... An alarm blared, cutting him off. Sir, Chen called out, we're detecting massive energy signatures, syndicate ships, dozens of them, jumping to warp. Arthur's blood ran cold. Track them. Where are they going? Chen's fingers flew across her console. They're converging on coordinates in an uncharted dark nebula, sir. But these readings, they're like nothing I've ever seen. Arthur's mind raced, piecing together fragments of intercepted syndicate communications. Their architect's mad ravings about burning it all down suddenly took on horrifying new context. He turned to Sirefather, seeing the same realization dawning in the Klingon's eyes. They're going to try to destroy everything, Arthur said, his voice barely above a whisper. The entire quadrant. Sirefather's face hardened. Then we must strike first. Gather your best warriors, human. We end this now. Arthur nodded, already plotting their high-stakes endeavor. As he began issuing orders to assemble their elite strike force, a cold certainty settled in his gut. One way or another, this would be their final battle.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.